We in the studio. We in the studio. With Rob in the studio. In the studio. In the studio. Catch a vibe in the studio. In the studio. We in the studio. With Rob in the studio. In the studio. We in the studio. Yeah, I'm in the studio with Rob. I need to make the heat flicker. Izzle on it, only thing can make a Rico beat sicker. So listen and get your wisdom. Gemstones on your head. Tub with the OG like Flintstones, good in bed. Been living a long time and he got something to say. Depending on how you feeling, dog, you might got something to pray. This type of influence that you ain't gotta filter through your liver. We in the studio with Rob. Come let the heat rock simmer.
Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of In the Studio with Rob. I am Rob. Welcome back. And I have with me my man Izzle.
Here.
How's it going, young fella?
It is going, sir.
All right. Hey, I want you to just be glad everybody's here checking us out. I appreciate you guys. Hey, we always talk about the people. So what we're going to do something a little different. You're going to hear Izzle ask me some questions that came from the people. So we last episode we talked about you wanting to be married, and we hit on some marriage stuff. So now we're gonna hear some questions, and I'm gonna do some more things on marriage later. But I wanted to hear from the people. So Israel was gonna ask me some questions. I'm gonna answer these questions. I haven't seen the questions, so this is off the top of the dome, just with a little bit of what God has given me and to give back from the questions that you give me.
If you recall, we asked at the end of the last episode for some questions, and we got some. So from this point forward, Izzle was no longer Izzle. Izzle was the people.
Izzle is the people.
And the people have questions.
So now I'm going to say, people, what are your questions?
All right. So let's start here. What are some key factors you've learned that contribute to maintaining a strong marriage?
Key factors. And the first one is communication. Got to be able to communicate with each other. You have to be. As hard as it is. And I struggled with that early on because, look, I get tired of talking to you because if I feel like you ain't listening, and I just shut down. It's not a healthy way to be. Got to be able to talk and communicate with each other. You have to be able to forgive one another. I don't care what they do. You got to figure out how to forgive if you want to have a long and lasting relationship. Because a lot of times what happens is people say they move on, but they don't forgive. You can't move on if you don't forgive. You can't just say, oh, well, I'm going to just ignore what happened. You're going to have to forgive, deal with the issue, and then you move forward. But you got to be able to forgive. So I just think it's a lot of other things, but those two to me, communication and forgiveness, they go a long way in a marriage.
Perfect segue for our next question. How can couples effectively communicate through tough times, especially when emotions are running high?
Yeah, and I kind of gave you one tip early on. In the last week's segment where I talked about writing down, taking notes as opposed to having those conversations. So sometimes when one person is talking, the other person take notes. So that you don't get back into a back and forth. That helps. Another thing that helps going into it is that you have to understand that you're not fighting with the person. You're fighting with an issue. So when you understand they're not your enemy, you can have a different conversation. And then also, depending on you should always pray before you get into those conversations. That helps bring all the heat down. Say a prayer. Ask God to give you some peace in this conversation. Ask God to open up your heart to receive what the person is saying to you. So that brings the level of tension down. But then also sometimes when things are, really chaotic, sometimes you need maybe have a mediator. You need a third party in there, another couple that you can talk to help you guys, keep from acting, crazy.
You good? Ready?
I'm ready.
All right. What are the best ways to keep intimacy alive in a long-term marriage, even when life gets busy?
Gotta make time for it. That's the first thing. Because what happens is people always say, I'm busy. You ain't really that busy. You make time for everything you want to make time for. you should make the same type of time for your partner. So, and again, and when we talk about intimacy, I'm talking about every single day. You need to be saying something, working on that intimacy with your wife, with your husband. Send her a text. Send him a text. If y'all work different shifts and different things like that, then call and say, talk to him on the phone real soft and let him know you love him. You have to make sure that you are having those intimate conversations that ultimately will turn to intimacy in the bedroom if you do it often enough. So again, you have to make sure that this is a daily, intimacy should be daily. Just like you talking to that person, look, I need to make sure every day I need to make sure you mean something to me. I need to let you know how much I care about you daily. So I think too many times we get caught up and it's like, oh, I don't have time. You have time, but you have to make the person a priority. The problem is you stop making them a priority. They should be, your husband, your wife should be your priority. Everything else is after that. What else you got?
All right. How do you balance your individual dreams with the collective goals of your marriage? Obviously, this marriage, because your first one failed miserably.
It didn't fail miserably. Actually, it taught me a lot, so it wasn't a failure. No, but I think what happens is your goals have to be a part of the marriage. Mm-hmm. I think what happens is too many times we make goals outside of marriage, outside of our marriage. Like this is my goal. No. There's the goal within the marriage. So your goal can't become the marriage or bigger than the marriage. The goals have to be within the marriage. So again, it goes back to stop being so selfish. You thinking only about you and not about us and not about our marriage. You're thinking about what you need to get out of this. I want to have, again, and I talked about dreams deferred a few weeks ago. And what happens is sometimes your dreams get deferred, but you had opportunity to handle those dreams before you got married. So now that you're married, you have to understand how do I work those dreams or those goals into my marriage, not where they take over my marriage, not where they push my husband or my wife out of the marriage, and now it's about me and my goals. You have to make sure you keep them in there. And that goes we need to have conversations, husband, wife, let's sit down and talk about your goals. Babe, you want to do what? Okay, well, let's figure out how can we do that when we got to work, we got the kids, we got time for us. How do we let's figure out how we can make that work. And and just because I think what happens is if your husband or wife said this might not be the best time, doesn't mean it's not ever going to happen. It may mean we got some other things on our plate that we need to get rid of before we can move towards your goal. Because your goal should be my goal ultimately, because I want you to grow. But we have to do this thing together.
All right. In your experience, does cultural background or identity shape how we navigate marriage?
Yeah. Everything shapes how you navigate marriage. So, of course, culture will. Because, again, every culture is different. I mean, so let's say you come from Asian culture, or you get with somebody from an Asian culture where the wife may be more submissive, and so then you're looking for her to give more than in her culture. You're like, no, I just be quiet and let you handle it all. So I have to make adjustments for your culture, or at least understand your culture and teach you my culture, so that we can know that when we come together, look, I expect and I need you to give me everything you got. I want your voice. I don't want you sitting on the corner like baby. I want you out here talking to me.
Like baby.
Yeah, I ain't putting baby in the corner. I need you to talk to me. I need you to communicate. Give me your ideas so that we can continue to grow. But unfortunately, I think, we had this thing, and I shouldn't say we, but I used to think, it's like, you want to stay within your culture, because again, it is easier to understand the cultures, but even our culture has changed so much just as black people, that just because we black, we don't necessarily have the same culture all the time as how we were raised. So you really have to take time to understand how the person was raised and what their background is. When I talked before about shared values in the last week's episode. You have to understand what their values are to know if you have shared values. So whether or not, if they're white, Hispanic, Asian, whatever, if you have shared values, you can figure out how to make it work. But I need to take time to figure those things out. So it's not necessarily your race that will separate us as much as our shared values. So I need to spend time understanding what your values are, and then I can work through the cultural differences.
Well said, sir. All right, we have a couple more, and these are a little more interesting, fun-wise. So this one is a question about an age gap relationship. What advice would you give a family member considering an age gap relationship? About 20-year difference. I'm assuming 20 years younger, because
one of them gonna be 20 years younger or older.
I'm assuming 20 years younger than the person asking.
Oh, well, I mean, either way, I would still say, when people say age is just a number, that's a lie.
Facts.
It is a number, so it's true that it is just a number, but it has more. It carries a lot of weight. It means something different. That age gap, the things, when you talk about 20 years, the music, and again, you could say, "Oh, I listen to old songs." No, but you ain't feel them. You listen to them, but you ain't live them. When you was listening, the old song you listened to as a kid, I was grinding to, on the dance floor. I was feeling that song, but it is different. So
you're feeling something.
Yeah, so it's a difference of the age gap, your life experience. You trying to begin your life. I'm in the twilight of my life. Not meaning I'm about to die, but I got a different outlook on what's going to happen next in my life. You may want a family. I already raised a family. 20 years, look, I got a whole bunch of kids in 20 years, that then grew up, So it's that age gap, I think, is not to say that it can't work. If God wants it, and it's something that God put forth, then it can work. But I just think that you need more time than less to figure it out. I think sometimes it's like, because I want to know, what do you want me for? I put it from this way. As a young man, when I was, about 26, 27, somewhere around there, I dated for a short time somebody that was like 42. She had an 18-year-old son. I was like 27. She was cool, but I wasn't looking for no long-term. It was like, we cool, we just hanging. But when I met her son, I felt like, I should be hanging with him. So it wasn't the same. So, but I think you have to figure out, why does this young man or young woman want this old man or old woman? What are you trying to get out of it? Do they want a mommy figure, daddy figure?
They're going to hear this.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So are you looking for a mommy figure or a daddy figure, or do you want me, because you think I'm well off, that I'm going to take care of you as a young age? Or what do you want? And then it's vice versa. As an older person, what do I want from this young boy or this young girl? Because again, what do they bring to the table that we're going to expire? It's like, okay, so if if it's a young girl and it's like, well, again, most people say, well, the man, of course, you want a young girl and she's fine and you're going to have some sex. That's it. You ain't really going to, it's like, nah, bro, you got to have more than that. You going to want to talk to this girl too at some point. And so there's that gap in the conversation that certain things you will say and joke about that she ain't going to understand.
Mm-hmm.
You 60 years old talking to somebody 25, they talking about a rotary phone. Remember when you had the rotary phone? They be like, oh, what? You know, again, not to say that it can't work, but I would say
you might not get that baby in the corner joke.
Yeah, take your time. Take your time, go slow and make sure you lay out, you know, what is it that I want out of this relationship? What is it that they want out of this relationship? And know those things before you try to take it to another level. You know, again, if you're just out having some fun, just keep it at that. But if you're really talking about building a relationship with somebody that, you know, again, it's a lot that go into it that you should take your time with.
All right, and we have a request for you to describe the difference in experiences when you had your first child in your first marriage to the time where you had your first child in your second marriage. How were those experiences different, and how was your life different?
Well, one, I was very young, and one, I wasn't married when I had my first child, so that was a big difference. But and two, I was 19 versus 30. So that was, you know, again, age and mindset and everything else was totally different. I was a totally different person. I was afraid when my first child was born. I wasn't afraid when it's, you know.
Why were you afraid?
Because I was a daddy. I was like, I gotta take care of somebody. I wasn't really ready for that, mentally or financially or nothing else. I was afraid. I didn't know what to expect. So, and in the second marriage, I was a grown man. I knew what I was doing. You know, so but as far as how I felt about, I think I was also excited, but I was excited for both. But for different, like when you young and you got kids and it's like, you playing with them on the floor and, but luckily when I had at 30, when I had my son, I'm still able to play on the floor. I'm still able to do those things. So nothing really changed physically as far as that goes. But so I was still excited. And again, it was new because it was a new relationship as well. So having a child with my wife, was exciting. So it was still exciting. But, I don't really, like I said, the biggest thing was me being so young and afraid early on versus, later I was mature and ready to handle it.
All right. Our last question, sir.
What you got?
All right. What advice would you give to one who may be considering getting married but is unsure about whether or not they can handle the commitment?
You really, the handling the commitment part is not something that you're going to be sure about. You just do it. It's not like I can go in and say, oh yeah, I know for a fact I'm going to be able to. No, you don't know. And that's the problem. People always say, well, if it was me, I wouldn't. You never know what you would do in any situation. So what you do is not about whether or not you can handle the situation. Is I'm thinking about the person and the person that I want to marry and I want to build my life with. And if that person has all those things that I need or want in a relationship to build a marriage off of, then I can't be afraid of the commitment. That's like I said, you're just afraid because you ain't never been there. It's almost like when I said with my first child, with my daughter, when she was born, I was afraid because I never been a daddy before. When my son came, of course, I'm daddy already. I've been daddy. So I ain't scared to be a daddy no more because I've been that. You'll be nervous about the commitment until you're committed. But I think a lot of times people have been in committed relationship for years, and it's like only difference was you wasn't married, but you committed to them already. So yeah, you can be committed. So it's just a matter of just saying, okay, this person, I'm focusing on the person, and then once I make the commitment, of course, I'm building it with this person, and we're in this together. It ain't about me no more. And even when I'm afraid of the commitment part, I can talk to you about it. I can share that with you, and you can tell me, yeah, well, I'm a little nervous about commitment too. Again, because if it's a guy, the same fear of commitment I have, she probably got the same, but she ain't thinking about it the same way. Because for us, it always ends up like, it's like a guy, oh, he gonna cheat. Well, no, it ain't about cheating, but it's about, yo, this is hard, I wanna run. Because I ain't never been in this before. People cheat, not always just because they want to have sex all the time with somebody else, as much as this got difficult. This changed from what I was used to. So now I'm trying to find an outlet. But I need to find my outlets within my wife. Every time, I always tell people, when you get married, or when every 7 years, people change. Whether you're married or not, but 7 years people change. So when you get married, all you gotta do is hold out for a few more years, you get a new wife. So just hold on, she gonna change, and the older she get, the more she changes. So you get her to be quicker. But don't be afraid of the commitment part. Focus on the woman or the man that you want to marry, and what y'all can build together. And as long as y'all on the same page on, you have the shared value, and you trust that person, and that person respects you, and you respect them, you have all those different things that we talked about last week, then you'll get through. And make sure, again, you got people in your corner that's supporting you when things come up and you have some challenges in your marriage. So, like I said, it's interesting when people talk about marriage that, it's some are afraid. It's like, well, I don't need to get married because we good the way we are. But in reality, you married, you living with somebody, and y'all sharing all your bills and paying. So what are you afraid of? Because you already married, basically. You doing all this. You might as well look, either be married or be single. That's my thing. If I gotta live with you and act married, then I might as well be married. Or I can go get my own place and go have my own fun by myself. I ain't gotta be with you. I can go somewhere else, and I can have many of yous. But no, I'm just saying. But so we acting like it's like, oh wow, I don't want to get married. It's just this thing. You already married, bro or sis. You've been living with this dude for years, and y'all been acting married and carrying y'all. You upset every time he look at somebody else, just like a married woman would do. So might as well get married. Stop faking the funk. So, but anyway, I think, like I said, marriage is a beautiful thing. So I think it's one of the things where you have to, you won't know how beautiful it is until you go through it and go through some drama with it. See, the beauty is not in ooh, I love you in the wedding. The wedding is cool, and that's just a show for other people. But the real life comes when you go home and y'all living life, and then you got some ups and some downs, and y'all make it through. And then you look back and you say, yo, remember when we used to live in the little little trailer or little one-room apartment, or we had a little raggedy car. When you could talk about all those things that y'all came through, that's where you realize, yo, this woman got my back. She was with me when I was driving this little raggedy car. Windows didn't even roll down in the back. She was still hanging with me, or she could say, yeah, he was with me when I, had these other kids, and, I had brought other kids into the marriage, and he raised my son or daughter as his own. That's beautiful stuff. So again, look at the marriage, work on, think about what you want to do, but think about the person and what you can build with them. So I'm glad to hear from the people. And people, keep the questions coming in. We'll try to do this again at another episode, and again, we appreciate you guys. So
Yeah, solid.
all right,
Thank
so
you, people.
appreciate your people, and again, until next time, peace.
Bye.
Studio. We in the studio. We in the studio. We Rob in the studio. In the studio. In the studio. Catch a vibe in the studio. In the studio. We in the studio. We Rob in the studio. In the studio. We in the studio. Catch a vibe. Yeah, I'm in the studio with Rob. I need to make the heat flicker. Is alone and only thing can make a Rico beat sicker. So listen and get your wisdom. Gemstones on your head. Good with the OG like Flintstones. Good in bed. Been living a long time and he got something to say. Depending on how you feeling, dog, you might got something to pray. This type of influence that you ain't gotta filter through your liver. We in the studio with Rob. Gonna let the heat rock simmer.